where I shuffled it, and the urgency coming through is almost physical. A choice was made about you yesterday, and that single choice rewired everything between you two. The cards feel heated, like they absorbed a verdict, and whatever happened left a permanent mark. This person sat with themselves in a way they avoided, and they stopped negotiating with their heart. The Emperor appears first, and it reveals a firm boundary they drew inside themselves about you. They did not waver or circle back this time. They landed on something concrete and irreversible. This was not an impulse from a restless night. It was a conclusion built from months of pressure. Yesterday, the internal war they carried about you ended, and one side finally won without resistance. The resolution in their energy is unlike anything prior, and the cards reflect a stillness after finality. They stopped asking whether you were worth the risk, and they answered that question with a permanent yes. That answer cost them something real inside themselves, because choosing you meant releasing who they pretended to be. Judgment arrives as the second card tonight, and it confirms a reckoning that happened inside their mind. They weighed every interaction against every fear they held, and the interactions outweighed the fears entirely. Something you did recently tipped the entire scale, and they may never tell you which moment it was. The tipping point was quieter than you would expect because the loudest shifts arrive in whispered form. Yesterday, they woke carrying one version of their future, and they fell asleep carrying a different one. The message flooding the spread tonight is clear. Yesterday, they decided about you, and everything changes now. This is not a maybe or a leaning thought. It is a locked decision carrying real weight. You may have felt something shift in your atmosphere, and that disturbance originated from their side entirely. The Ace of Wands ignites third here, and it marks the start of action from that choice. They crossed a threshold that erased the remaining doubt, and what lives on the other side is clarity. Their mind stopped circling the same worn questions because the answer arrived and silenced every competing voice. This decision touched every compartment of their daily life, and they already started rearranging things around you. You are not a passing thought inside their plans. You became the axis those plans revolve around now. The Ten of Cups revealed fourth confirms the future, a future they deliberately constructed with you inside it. They built a vision yesterday that included your presence, and that vision felt more honest than anything prior. Whatever wall stood between possibility and commitment crumbled, and the rubble still settles inside their chest. They made peace with the vulnerability your bond requires, and that peace changed the texture of everything. The cards vibrate with the aftermath of a conclusion, and that conclusion has your name written across it. You felt something yesterday, even without naming it, and what you felt was their decision reaching your body. This bond crossed into territory casual connections never reach, and it happened because they chose it deliberately. Everything forward operates under terms set without you knowing, and those terms were locked yesterday in silence. A decision this large generates its own momentum naturally, and nothing can slow the force it already carries. What they sealed in place cannot be reversed by distance, and the cards confirm that with full certainty. Stay exactly where you are and trust what you sense, because what changed yesterday already heads toward you. The proof arrives not in their words, but actions, and those actions begin sooner than you would expect. Their decision breathes on its own now, without help, and it will find you regardless of any circumstance. You were chosen yesterday in a room you were absent from, and that choosing altered both your trajectories. Nothing between you two resembles what it was before, and the cards confirm that change favors you entirely. The focus shifts entirely toward you now, and what lives on your side demands to be spoken. You sensed a disturbance in the air yesterday, and your body registered it before your mind did. The Seven of Swords reversed appears first, and it mirrors the exhaustion of guarding yourself this long. You built a routine around not expecting anything, and that routine became a religion you practiced daily. There were weeks you trained yourself to detach fully, and each detachment felt like a quiet funeral. You buried your hope so many times it stopped resisting, and now it just lies still inside. Part of you accepted a version where nothing happens, and you rehearsed that ending until it felt true. Your chest tightened in moments nobody knew about, and you swallowed that pressure like it was normal. The Five of Pentacles arrives second, and it reflects the loneliness you wore while surrounded by people. You smiled through gatherings, carrying a private ache, and nobody in those rooms knew what lived inside. There were nights your thoughts circled back to them, and you punished yourself for not being stronger. You told yourself strong people release what is uncertain, and then you spent every quiet hour failing. Your phone became a battlefield between impulse and discipline won every time at hidden cost. You deleted drafts holding your actual feelings inside, and the backspace key absorbed more honesty than anyone. The labor of pretending to be unaffected drained you, and that drain showed up in unexpected places. Your sleep shifted without any obvious explanation at all, and you blamed everything except the real reason. The Page of Pentacles arrives third, and it reveals the patience you confused with passive acceptance. You were never passive about this bond inside yourself. You were volcanic beneath a surface made of stone. The stillness you performed for others was an act, and maintaining it required more strength than anyone knew. You caught small signals that contradicted your worst fears, and you buried them to protect yourself from hope. Hope became the most dangerous feeling you carried, and you rationed it like something you could not afford. Your body kept score of every suppressed reaction precisely, and the tension sits in places you stopped noticing. You carried this alone not from lack of support, but because explaining meant admitting it was fully real. Admitting it was real meant risking the composed image, and that image became the only stability you trusted. The Hanged Man appears fourth, and it confirms the suspended state you existed in for so many months. You lived between wanting and withdrawing at the same time, and that limbo became your most familiar territory. There were mornings you woke already exhausted by it, and the day had not even started presenting itself. You monitored yourself constantly for signs of caring, and every sign you caught became evidence against you. The version of you sitting here right now carries a tiredness that has nothing to do with sleep. You are tired of performing neutrality about this bond, and the performance is cracking at its edges. Something inside you registered what happened yesterday, and your body responded without needing the specific details. That physical response was not random or anxiety. It was your energy recognizing a shift aimed at you. You deserve to know your instincts were never wrong, and every buried signal was accurate from the start. The cards honor the version of you that felt everything, not the one pretending none of it mattered. Whatever composure you maintained through this entire chapter served a purpose now reaching its natural expiration. You do not need to perform strength anymore here, because what arrives next meets you where you are. Your guard kept you intact through the uncertain stretch, and the cards now say you can lower it. Trust what your body told you in that shift, because it recognized a truth your mind still denied. The stillness you practiced is about to be rewarded, and it arrives in a form you recognize instantly. The lens turns fully toward their side now, and what they carried into yesterday needs witnessing. This person did not arrive at that choice quickly, and the road behind it stretched long. The King of Cups reversed appears first, and it shows the turmoil they masked with control. They spent months constructing an appearance of calm, while underneath their feelings multiplied without permission. Every conversation with you left a residue on them, and they scrubbed at it without success. They analyzed your words long after you stopped speaking, and found meaning in pauses you never intended. This person argued with their own reflection about you, and lost that argument repeatedly in silence. Yesterday, that argument ended with a total surrender, and surrender tasted different than they expected. They chose you not from weakness, but from exhaustion, of resisting what had become painfully obvious. The resistance they maintained required daily conscious effort, and that effort drained reserves they needed elsewhere. Their friends noticed the decline before they admitted it, and concern in those conversations made them uneasy. They deflected every question about their emotional state, and the deflections grew more transparent each week. The Tower arrives second, and it confirms the internal collapse that preceded their decision about you. Something inside their constructed reality shattered without warning, and the breaking happened in a private moment. They sat with the wreckage of denial quietly and realized that structure was never built to last. Denial served them while the timing felt impossible, but yesterday timing shifted and denial lost its grip. They replayed a specific moment with you before deciding, and that moment became the catalyst for everything. You may never learn which interaction tipped them because they guard that detail like sacred ground. Their pride fought hardest against this particular surrender, and pride was the last wall standing before collapse. When that wall fell, they felt terror and relief, and the relief surprised them more than the fear. They cried yesterday in a way they had not allowed, and tears washed through months of built pressure. This person felt physically lighter once the decision settled, and that lightness confirmed they chose correctly. The Six of Wands arrives third, and it reveals the victory they claimed over their own resistance. They conquered the part of themselves that feared exposure, and that conquest changed how they view their future. Yesterday, they stopped treating you as a risk and started treating you as a truth to honor. That shift in framing altered everything downstream from it, and they feel the current pulling them toward you. Their body relaxed in places that held tension for months, and muscles they forgot existed finally unclenched. They looked at their life with brutal honesty and saw the gap where you were supposed to be. That gap existed in their mornings and their evenings, and in every transition between one task and another. They stopped pretending the gap could be filled elsewhere, because every substitute dissolved against the real thing. This person reorganized their priorities around that decision, and you climbed to a position you always belonged in. They already began making quiet adjustments in their life, and those adjustments create space designed for you. The version of them before yesterday is gone completely, and the version standing now faces your direction only. Their decision was not born from fear or loneliness. It was recognition of something they could not outlive. The cards confirm their side burns with irreversible certainty, and that certainty heads toward you without detour. They are not debating or weighing options any longer. The scale broke under the weight they carry. What they decided carries the gravity of a permanent shift, and their body moved before their mind followed. You exist in their thoughts as a fixed point now, and everything else orbits around that center. Stay open to what arrives from their direction shortly, because their decision already converted into motion toward you. The cards snap into a different frequency now, and what comes through is pure, undiluted instruction. Everything discussed before this point was context, and now the spread narrows into what you must do. The Three of Wands appears first, and it demands you position yourself to receive what approaches. You cannot meet this next chapter from behind a wall, and the cards refuse to let you hide. The action required is not pursuit or initiation. It is the deliberate removal of your own resistance. Stop bracing for a version of this that hurts, because that bracing blocks what is trying to land. Your body already knows this connection shifted yesterday, and your task is to stop contradicting that knowing. Put down the script you prepared for disappointment fully, because that script belongs to a timeline that expired. When their energy reaches you in the coming days, respond from the chest, not from the fortress. The fortress served its purpose through the waiting season, and dismantling it now is the bravest action. Do not wait for certainty before you soften, because softening creates the very space for certainty to land. The magician arrives second, and it reminds you that your energy shapes what materializes from here. If you receive their approach with suspicion or testing, The connection stalls in a loop you already know. Receive it with the openness of a person who knew that this was always supposed to arrive eventually. Your next action is not a conversation or a text. It is an internal agreement to stop blocking. Tell your nervous system that the threat has passed, and what arrives now carries safety inside it. The cards demand you release the identity of the one who never gets chosen and never receives love. That identity protected you, but it also caged you, and the lock on that cell just broke open. Walk out of the old narrative with shoulders dropped and enter the next one without clenching anything. Their decision yesterday requires a matching choice from you, and that choice is simply to allow it. Stop asking whether you deserve what is approaching, because that question was answered by the cards already. You deserve it, and the spread confirms it clearly, and your task is to stop arguing with that. The Empress arrives third, and she instructs you to nurture this bond instead of interrogating it. Do not inspect the gift when it reaches your hands. Let it exist without demanding additional proof. The proof lives in how your body responds to them, and that response was never fabricated or performed. Your action plan is not complex or layered at all. It is singular, and it begins with allowing. Say yes to the shift you already felt yesterday, and let that yes fill every guarded room inside. Open the door you sealed when hope became too costly, and stand in the frame without retreating. Their momentum depends on meeting softness, not resistance, and you control whether that softness exists or not. Lower the wall by inches if protection matters, but lower it because the cards confirm full safety. Every part of this reading pointed toward one instruction, and that instruction is to stop blocking yourself. The decision they made requires your participation fully, and participation means choosing to believe what you feel. Act on the knowing your body carried for months, and let that knowing guide your next visible step. This is not the moment for caution or distance. It is when your patience finally collects its debt. Their action is already in motion toward you, and the only variable left in this equation is openness. Release the need to understand before you accept it, because understanding follows surrender and never precedes it. What approaches you was decided with full commitment, and meeting it halfway would dishonor both sides. Give this moment the version of you that feels most, and let that feeling override every defensive instinct. The cards refuse to repeat this instruction twice, and hesitation past this point becomes its own answer. Move toward what already moves toward you tonight, and let the collision happen without controlling the angle. The cards descend into the hidden layer now, and what exists here was never meant for conversation. Their decision had a surface and a basement, and the basement holds what they will never volunteer. The moon appears first, and it guards the subconscious confession they cannot bring into daylight yet. What they decided was only the visible half, and the invisible half runs deeper than language permits. They did not just choose you as a direction, they chose you as the permanent answer to themselves. That distinction matters because one is reversible and the other rewrites the architecture of who they are. They imagined growing old beside you in a flash, and the image arrived uninvited and refused to leave. That vision was not fantasy or wishful thinking. It was a blueprint their body accepted as inevitable. They saw themselves showing you parts of their life that they never shared with another living person. The sacred and the broken and the embarrassing pieces, all laid out for you specifically to witness. They want you to see what nobody else earned, and that desire terrifies them beyond any other feeling. The hermit reversed arrives second, and it exposes their exhaustion from carrying this alone in darkness. They isolated with these feelings deliberately for months because sharing felt like losing control of the narrative. Control was the last thread they gripped while falling, and yesterday that thread snapped and they let go. What they confess only to themselves at 3 a.m. is that you own a part of them permanently. Not metaphorically, but in the way that removing you would require surgery on their actual identity. They built rituals around you without ever naming them, and those rituals structure their private days now. Checking for your presence online became a sacrament, and they performed it with the devotion of prayer. They memorized your patterns without conscious effort, and that memorization embarrasses them when they notice it. The hidden confession beneath yesterday's decision is this: they stopped wanting a life and started wanting yours. Not to take it, but to merge with it completely until the boundary between yours and theirs dissolved. They dream about you in ways they would never describe, and those dreams leave warmth that lasts hours. The Four of Swords reversed arrives third, and it confirms the restlessness that preceded yesterday's decision. They could not sleep the night before they chose, because their mind rehearsed futures at exhausting speed. Every future they tested without you in it collapsed before reaching any version of contentment or peace. They tested alternatives deliberately to prove you wrong, and every alternative proved you right, without exception. The hidden layer holds a possessiveness they feel ashamed of, a need to be your only presence. They refuse to share your attention or depth, and that greed startles them because it feels primal. This person built an internal world with you in it, and it runs with more detail than reality. They furnished rooms in their imagination for you both, and each room holds a conversation that never happened. The weight beneath that decision is staggering, and you would weep if you ever saw its full scope. You are not imagining the magnitude of this connection, and the hidden layer confirms it exceeds your estimation. Their body holds confessions their mouth will never deliver, and those confessions pulse through every interaction. What they locked inside when the decision settled yesterday was a vow made to themselves about your future. That vow includes protecting you from things unseen and being present in ways you have not experienced before. The depth beneath their choice is not measured, it is absolute, and it terrifies even them without relief. You felt the tremor of something massive shifting yesterday, and what you felt was the basement of truth. Their hidden truth asks nothing except your presence, and that request reveals how deeply they mean it. What remains unspoken carries more voltage than confession, and that voltage reaches you before their voice does. Stay open to what surfaces from this depth, because it arrives in gestures before it arrives in words. The cards lift now into what awaits ahead, and the near future burns with the heat of decision. The Knight of Pentacles appears first here, and it signals a deliberate approach heading directly toward you. Within days, you will notice a change in them, and that change will feel unmistakable and intentional. They will not rush toward you with dramatic gestures. They arrive with quiet certainty in every step. The contact reaching you will carry a different texture, and your body will register it before your mind. Expect a moment where the air between you thickens, and in that thickness, truth becomes impossible to avoid. The lovers arrive second, and it confirms a convergence point neither of you can redirect or slow. That moment will feel like a door opening silently, and you will both know exactly what it means. Their approach will not require interpretation this time, because the clarity in their energy speaks for itself. The timeline the cards reveal is compressed and urgent, and delay on either side shrinks the window further. Something shifts visibly before this month closes fully, and that shift leaves no room for pretending anymore. You will feel a difference in how they look at you, and that look will hold nothing back. My advice through this spread narrows to one thing. Meet their honesty with your own, and nothing less. Do not perform gratitude or relief when they arrive. Just be present in the most undecorated version. Let the first moment between you exist without narration, and let silence carry what words would only dilute. Do not rush to define what is forming between you, because premature labels suffocate bonds that need air. Allow the connection to breathe at its own pace, and resist the urge to control what happens after. The sun appears third, and it instructs you to receive this chapter with warmth and without suspicion. Trust what your body tells you in that meeting, because your body was accurate about them all along. The message through this reading was singular and clear. Yesterday they decided, and everything changes from here. That decision was not impulse or emotion alone speaking. It was the collapse of every wall between you. What shifts from here forward is confirmed by every card, and it moves toward you with full certainty. The cards moved through confession and collapse and action, and landed in a future favoring this bond entirely. Every card pointed in one single undeniable direction, and not one suggested retreat from either side. This spread held more alignment than most readings carry, and that alignment speaks to something built on truth. You walked into this reading unsure of where you stood, and you leave knowing exactly what lives ahead. Whatever doubt occupied your chest before is answered now, and the answer came from the cards, not me. You deserve a connection that requires no decoding at all, and what approaches arrives already translated into certainty. This is not a closing, but an opening in disguise, and what comes next begins when you allow. Your patience through every uncertain month was not wasted. It was the price of entry into something real. The version of you that endured the wait earned this, and none of that struggle was invisible. You stood in the storm without knowing when it ended, and the ending arrived yesterday through their decision. Everything you swallowed and held and carried alone has a destination now, and that destination chose you back. The road behind you was longer than it needed, but it delivered you exactly where you belong. Your heart held the answer before the cards confirmed it, and now both sources finally agree on everything. Thank you for staying through all 6 parts tonight, and for trusting me with a reading this layered. I felt the weight of your situation in every card, and I hope this clarity brings you peace. Carry this with you gently into whatever comes next, because you are ready and the timing finally agrees.